Everyone, and welcome back to another Friday Reads. My phone hates me today, and it just deleted the first half of my Friday Reads that I had filmed, and I didn't realize it until I was putting things into my computer. So I'm going to have future Kate do the first half of Friday Reads, and then you'll see past Kate in her normal setting doing the second half of Friday Reads. But the boys are wild downstairs right now, so you would not be able to hear me much if I was filming down there. So it was a very, very good reading week, and it's going to be a longer Friday Reads. So if you want to, you can pause here and get a drink, get a tea, an iced tea if you want, because it is very hot lately, at least in the northern hemisphere here. And I just have a lot that I want to talk to you about. So it was, like I said, it was a great week of reading. And it did start off a bit anticlimactic, though, with The Yellow House by Sarah Broom. I ended up deciding to DNF it, which I know sounded like a total 180 from what I thought of it last week. But do you ever read a book where you get to the second volume and it has a very different vibe to it than the first volume? And this is the same thing. That's what happened with this book. And it felt kind of a lot less personal, I felt, in the second half. And I felt really at peace with DNFing it. I was in denial for a little while. I'll have that where for a little while I'll be in denial. Like, no, I'm loving it. I'm loving it. I'm really loving it. And not actually loving it. And then being like, no, I should just DNF it because now I'm avoiding reading. So anyhow, I lost interest, but I felt at peace with DNFing it because I still felt like I enjoyed the first half so much and I got kind of what I was hoping to get out of it. And I think that on BookTube, we, myself included, are so fixated on quantifiable reading. And so, if I ever kind of were to pick up a coffee table book or like my illustrated Harry Potter and flip through those, then, that's how can I document that on Goodreads towards my reading challenge? It doesn't go towards that. So it's really, you kind of transition into this goals-oriented reading once you're part of BookTube, which I think it's great to challenge yourself and urge yourself on, but then I think also you kind of get maybe too fixated on the end, the end result as opposed to kind of enjoying the ride. So I am at peace about DNFing it. I really liked her writing style, but just it became not my kind of memoir, kind of the second half in. But I think if you are really interested in kind of politics and economics and sociology, this is definitely the memoir for you. And then I did finally finish Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. And it hurts the end of the sixth Harry Potter, but I love that series so much. And it's just, yeah, I don't really have words to say. So I did put the seventh book on hold through my library, the audiobook. And I think it said 21 weeks until I get it. So I'm like, will it be like around Christmas by the time I'm reading the seventh one? But I do kind of like having a break in between those two. I mean, it can be nice to binge them, but I think I'm happy for the break. And I do really recommend then, speaking of Harry Potter, there are some really great Harry Potter ambient rooms. So in case you don't know, this is kind of like a result of ASMR, which are the videos where you listen to very magnified sound effects like chewing or turning pages in a book. And they're can cause some people that watch them get this kind of like tingling sensation down their spine. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen to me because it sounds lovely. But now these ambient worlds are kind of, it depends on the one that you're watching, but the Harry Potter ones have Harry Potter soundtrack music and then have, so it'll be like Gryffindor Common Room So then you can hear people like chattering in the background and like quills scratching on parchment and the fire crackling in the fireplace. So my favorite Harry Potter one, I think so far, is the Shell Cottage one, because you can hear the beach water, you hear the water lapping up on the shore, and it has really good music that they picked from the soundtrack. So it's kind of more melancholy sounding. So yes, definitely recommend that. And I will link it down below. Then I finished Anne of Avonlea by Ellen Montgomery, and I am just like a giddy schoolgirl about this series. Now I did read through, I said before, I read through Anne of Wendy Poplar's years ago, and the rest of the series felt like such a come down after Anne of Green Gables. But I gave Anne of Avonlea 5 stars. I loved it. I really, I don't know if it's that I'm reading it in audiobook format or I'm just finding it, like I said last week, balm for my brain. It is a bit more low key kind of than the normal books that I read, a bit quieter, but I'm just finding it incredibly enchanting and charming, and getting to see Anne coming into her own as a young adult, but you still see the kind of starry-eyed romantic Anne throughout that. She stays true to herself, and she still gets into some scrapes and some really funny ones with Diana. There's just so much humor. I loved meeting, again, Davy and Dora, the twins in this, that Marilla and Anne take in. Davy gets into so many scrapes, but you also just can't help but love him. I just wanted to give him a big hug the whole time. And getting to see Anne teaching for the first time. I just loved it. I absolutely loved it. I just soaked it all in, and I couldn't be more excited about this series. So I definitely, want to continue on with Anne of the Island is the next one. And I know a lot of people really love that one. There's some like really swoony romantic stuff in it. So yeah, I think this series is just exactly what I needed in 2020. But I'm also kind of, I don't know if I want to do Anne of the Island yet, because I want to have, the series waiting for me, but I also don't want to just waste it away. So we'll see the timing that I do, but there's a bunch of books in the series, so I'll still have a fair amount left, even if I did go ahead and treat myself immediately to Anne of the Island. And then I will tell you the next book that I listened to on audio was Mastering the Art of French Eating. So I've just been increasingly over the years more and more obsessed with food, and felt like, why have I not done more food memoirs? I loved French Kids Eat Everything and My Life in France by Julia Child, and French cooking. I just really want to investigate it more. So I looked and, found a bunch of food memoir audiobooks, which I'm finding nonfiction audiobooks, like also when I'm feeling like I wasn't having a great time reading this month, really, just making me feel like I'm making leaps and bounds in my reading enjoyment. So I picked up Mastering the Art of French Eating, and now Past Kate will tell you about my experience with that. In my Cooking Around the World project, which if you watched my vlogs, the recent ones from July or June, I did include a little bit about that. And so I've just been having so much fun, and I thought, you know what? Why don't I read some food memoirs? Because I'm so in the mood just for thinking constantly of food. And when I did my French Cooking Around the World meal, this meal, it was coq au vin, which is chicken and mushrooms and bacon, bone-in chicken, mind you, stewed in a red wine marinade. And when I ate it, I kid you not, like I cried. It was that good. Like I was like, I didn't know chicken could be this good. I didn't know it could be this tasty. And it just made me realize how much more I want to investigate French cooking. It's very decadent. I mean, the cream and the butter and lard and, wine in there, it just makes everything so delicious. So I, want to definitely be cooking more French dishes. So Mastering the Art of French Eating, I thought was a good way to go about it. And unfortunately, this was a very 3-star read though. To me, I got out of this what you get out of a cookbook. Like cookbooks feel less personal. With a memoir, I want you to share some of yourself with me. I want to, for you to give of yourself to me and kind of share your heart. It's a vulnerable thing to write a memoir, but if you're going to do it, you might as well really share. And she just felt really distant. In this memoir, her husband is a diplomat and they moved to Paris, and her mother is Chinese, and her Chinese mother had a French stepmother who was very cruel to her. So it's really interesting because kind of unknowingly, her mother really gave her this bias against anything French because of just the terrible childhood that she had with the French stepmother. But she moves to France and she's so excited about it. She's a foodie. And then her husband basically is called away to Iraq for a year. So he has a 3-year stint in France, but then he's called away. So she's by herself this year, and it felt really lonely. And there were some instances where she talks about having friends over for dinner, and at the end of the book, she's like, leaving this apartment, I remember I had some sad moments, but I also had some of the happiest moments. And I was like, when are these happy moments? I feel like you didn't let me get a glimpse kind of into your innermost thoughts, which is a lot to ask. It's a big ask, but I think as a reader of a memoir, that's kind of what you go in expecting. So I kind of got out of it what I would get out of a cookbook. So as a memoir, it let me down, but she did have a deep love for French cooking, and I am desperate now to make cassoulet, and it's a stewed bean and sausage dish, and her recipe, you take 4 days to make it. And I was like, if I'm going to make it, I'm going to make it right. I'm going to do these little steps over the course of 4 days and come out with this really super decadent dish. So I'm definitely planning on doing that. And the recipes are included in the back. So I will be checking it out from the library so I can actually read the cassoulet recipe. I don't think there were any other dishes that I was super desperate to make. Like I've made beef bourguignon, and it was all very interesting though, because each chapter was a different dish. And then she went to the region of France that dish is from, and she investigates the history of it, which I thought was a really cool layout for it. So there was a ton of interesting history. It was fascinating. It just didn't have the warmth that I wanted. So now I'm going to do a big tangent, even more so on cooking, and a couple cooking things that brought me joy this week. The first is Milk Street, which is a podcast. It is a food variety show podcast. It is the food podcast of dreams. And it is, they'll have a main interview with some celebrity to do with cooking. They will have question and answer time when people call in with their questions. They'll have a recipe of the week, and then they'll kind of have a food columnist give a spiel on something. So it's a lovely podcast, and I love to listen to it while I am cooking. The cooking this week that I did though was a bit of a letdown because I made risotto last week for the first time, and it was so good. It was a porcini mushroom risotto. But then I tried to make up my own recipe this week and added way too much lemon juice. It was just inedible. So I'm going to redeem myself and use a recipe next week for a drunken sausage risotto. It sounds terribly delicious. So I'm really looking forward to that. And I was very intimidated going in cooking risotto, but I just was very attentive and I watched several different videos on how to make it, and it was delicious. Then I also made chicken provençal, and it was just very herby. So this is another kind of iconic French dish, and I think I maybe added too many herbs, and the chicken was also dried out. But all that being said, it was just a very different experience from coq au vin. It was just, I don't know, it just didn't take with me. The herbs, the flavor set of the herbs, I just didn't love. So I don't know if I would love it ever. So I kind of thought I would just love every French dish ever, but I don't think that's the case. But I do definitely want to make chicken fricassee, because that's basically coq au vin with cream in it, which would be terribly exciting. And then the other thing that I've really been enjoying this week, there are a lot of great cooking blogs out there, and David Lebovitz,
He is an American expat who's lived in Paris for a couple decades now and has been writing this blog. He has written several cookbooks slash food memoirs, and his blog is just such a wealth of French recipes. And I did make this week his blue cheese biscuits, which they're using biscuits in the term that you use in the UK, so more crunchy. And they were so good. And actually, I did make them gluten-free. Instead of, you're supposed to use just regular flour, and I did a half a cup of tapioca flour or arrowroot flour, and then a quarter cup of coconut flour, and they turned out beautifully. They were so good, and they actually are extremely reminiscent of cheese straws. For those of you maybe who are from the southern US, you will know what cheese straws are. They're basically like cheese cookies, and they are so good. So that was really fun that I was able to convert it to be gluten-free, because I seem to do better when I eat less gluten. I don't have celiacs, but I just try to keep it in moderation. So I thought, why not transform this recipe if I can't, see what happens when I do. And they were absolutely delicious. Then on the French cooking note, my mother-in-law, who was visiting last weekend, told me about there's a whole cookbook series, I think that came out in like the 90s, that would be like Spain the Beautiful Cookbook, France the Beautiful Cookbook. So they're out of print, but I found on eBay for a very reasonable price, France the Beautiful Cookbook. And I was hoping it would be here this week, but it's going to be here Monday, and I cannot wait to sit down and just slowly flip through it. And yeah, and if I like it, I definitely want to order more in the series. I like the notion of that, having like a series of cookbooks. And then in the kind of gluten-free line, I remember this cookbook I checked out from the library last year that was, I baked my birthday cake using a recipe from it and made a delicious cookie recipe. The cookbook is My Paleo Patisserie. Jenni Hulet is the author. And these are genuinely like really good gluten-free recipes. So the cocoa ginger cookies are the ones that I made. And so I went ahead and ordered this cookbook on eBay. It was for sale for $2. So I went ahead and ordered that. And then yesterday tried to make choux pastry, which I hadn't made last time with this. And it was successful and it turned out really well. And actually, my Peter cannot have tomatoes. I feel so bad for him. He gets really, really dreadful sores all in his mouth for like 5 days if he does. And I don't really feel awesome after having pizza. The tomato sauce also gives me bad heartburn. So all these reasons, I thought, you know what? I know how to make this choux pastry now. Why not make a choux pastry pizza? White pizza. So olive oil, like garlic powder, yummy cheeses, and like pepperoni and maybe some other kind of yummy meat. So I'm really excited to try to make a really good white pizza, because now our family just doesn't eat pizza, and that's a very sad state of affairs. So Jenni Hulet has kind of how to transform the choux pastry into a pizza crust, how long to bake it, all of that. It definitely will taste different. It's not going to taste the same as, gluten-y pizza crust, but I think it's a very respectable substitute. I enjoyed the choux pastry that I made. So choux pastry, in case you don't know, it's the stuff that's for eclairs and cream puffs, all of those. Okay, I think I covered all of the food talk. That took a little while. So I hope you are interested in food. If you're not, I do apologize. Now I started an audiobook I'm very excited about called Yes, Chef by Marcus Samuellson. He is an Ethiopian who was adopted by Swedish parents. So already that's really interesting, those two cultures coming together. And it's, from the sound of things, it seems like his mother wasn't maybe the most advanced of cooks, but his grandmother was a really fabulous cook, and he spent a lot of time cooking with her. And now I want to get a Swedish cookbook from the library. So I'm just very much excited about all these things. And just the way he talks about the Swedish food, like dill butter, going with mashed potatoes, and like kind of the contrast, like then some sweet berries to have as a side, like stewed, and lots of fish. And it just sounds really fresh, like light and refreshing kind of fare. So I definitely want to get, the library does have a Swedish cookbook, and I want to get that at some point. So yeah, and this is, you know, my complaint about mastering the art of French eating. This is what I want out of a food memoir. There is a lot of heart in there, and he talks about, you know, just how grateful he was to his parents for what a great childhood he had. And he has a real passion for food. And he narrates the audiobook. So it's a really neat experience. And as soon as I started listening, just like 10 minutes in, I'm like, yes, this is what I wanted out of a food memoir. So I went ahead, you know, on Overdrive and checked out a bunch of food memoirs. So I'm going to be going through them, and it will be fun. And then I have a physical book for this one. Where is it? There it is. I started The House of Mirth by Edith Wharton with Adam and Kate, and I am loving this. See, I'm telling you that I am not fighting it. I'm loving reading right now. And she is pretty approachable in her writing style. I've just always thought of her as incredibly intimidating, but now I'm trying her now after I have, you know, 50 plus Victorian novels in my backlog, and she feels a lot more approachable. So I think maybe she might be a more like middling classic author, but I think if you do read classics, I think you don't need to feel intimidated by her. And I'm surprised there's also humor in this. Lily Bart, though, seems to be a bit of a Scarlett O'Hara, but you know what? They make fabulous leads in stories. They really, really do. So I'm very much looking forward to following Lily, because she's despicable. And I don't know if I'll feel more complexly about her by the end, but I am here for it. So yeah, really excited that I'm enjoying The House of Mirth. Then I am now, let's see, 270 pages into Playing for the Ashes. I'm obsessed. And I don't have much else to say because I'm, you know, stuck in the middle of it, almost in the middle, and can't wait to continue with this. You guys know how much I'm obsessed with the Lindley series. Okay. And then I finished Waterfalls of Stars by Roseanne Alexander. This is a new favorite book. I gave it 5 stars. This was everything I could possibly dreamed it would be. Could possibly have dreamed it would have been. Anyhow, it was just a perfect book. It was a perfect book. It just had so much inner dialogue of her experience living on Scomer for 10 years. She and her husband are wardens of this island, Scomer, which is off the coast of Wales. And it is unlike any other place she's been to. And she just immediately felt at home there and had this really unreal connection with this place. And she knew once she left, after the end of 10 years, she would never go back. And, you know, at in the very first few weeks that they got there, she said to her husband, let's stay for 10 years. And she said this to him, you know, they're 20. They just got married. They moved there together. And when you're 20, 10 years seems so long. It seems a very long time and just kind of forever. But I mean, they were barely making ends meet. You really don't make a lot being a warden of the island. And they knew at some point, like, we can't continue with this. What will we retire on? And it was just one of the most painful things ever for her to leave. But I was thinking, like, what all will she write about? But there are really remarkable things that happen. And she, you know, she gets to know certain seal pups. They have different personalities. And there's different people that are involved with conservation that come on the island and become friends with them, spend different amounts of time there. And just her describing the different places in it. They have a magical Christmas there where somebody airdrops from a helicopter a Christmas tree. And just the sheer isolation here, it was kind of astounding because this is also pre-internet. And they don't even have electricity there. So it was just a breathtakingly beautiful book. There are some really painful parts where there's an oil spill and she can just see some of the seal pups really, they're just like absolutely covered in oil. And so there are some really heartbreaking moments in here. And so she's able to see kind of, you know, we'll hear about oil spills, but it's very remote from me. It doesn't feel like something I relate to. And so to be so up close and personal with kind of the devastating effects of that was really heart-wrenching. But what I loved is that you get to then see kind of the beautiful recovery of it. And there are so many people kind of championing keeping things clean. And so it just, I can't recommend this enough. I loved it so very much. And then let's see. Okay, yes. So then what I'll be reading this next week, I need to read Work by Louisa May Alcott, because I want to have the video up on time this month for the 29th, and for Year of Louisa May. And then I want to read Mr. Harrison's Confessions, that I'm supposed to be buddy reading with Megan and Christy and Claire, but I am not being a good buddy reader. I just got behind, and I want to read it. It won't take long, and I'm really looking forward to it. And then another Elizabeth Gaskell, the Victorian, Read Along Most Victorian for June and July that I host, is Cousin Phyllis and Other Stories. So I want to get reading that, and it's nice. Short stories just feel so like I can accomplish those. And then I did not start the next in my TBR stack yet, which is Lucia in London and Mapp and Lucia. Unfortunately, reading this on my phone was not working for me. I was not enjoying it, and so I want to give this a fair shot. If it's not the right time for me to read it, that's fine, but I want to make sure it's not the format that was bothering me. Because I was very excited about this, and it was bumming me out. I wasn't really enjoying what I was reading in the book, but I think I was also feeling really unwell on the day that I tried it. So I want to try this again properly. And then I really want to read Water Song, that I just lost my train of thought. The Frog Prince retelling that I hauled from the library last week. And then I could go for a really super duper readable The Royal Secret by Lucinda Riley. So this is, I've read the first two in her Seven Sisters series, and she has so many books, which makes me so happy. And this is one that I won in a Goodreads giveaway, and it sounds fabulous. There is, that's what it is. Yes, there's a will that there's like a big secret from the will of this man, Sir James Harrison, one of the greatest actors of his generation, passes away. And so there's kind of lots of ramifications from what is in the will. But I do adore the tiara on this cover. Yes. I think I made it through everything I wanted to talk about. I hope you enjoyed this 30-minute Friday Reads, and let me know what you will be reading this weekend. And I hope you enjoyed all the food talk, because I don't usually do that much, but I'm just very enthusiastic about it lately. And oh, yes, I did reserve a couple cookbooks from the library, but it's really hard to pick up holds at my library. Like, they give very few slots, so we'll see when I can actually pick them up. But when I do, I heard about them on David Lebovitz's blog, and he just made them sound lovely. So I have a whole list of ones that I want to check out, but I thought I'd start with just two and try to cook a couple recipes out of each. And I hope you all have a lovely weekend, and I will be back for another video soon. Bye.